Coach looked Priya Anand dead in the eyes and said, "Swimmers like you don't make Olympic teams. You make excuses." Was 19 years old. She had just swum the fastest 200-meter butterfly of her life. And the head coach of the U.S. National Development Program, Coach Gerald Voss, said it loud enough for every girl on that pool deck to hear. Nobody laughed, but nobody said anything either. That silence, that specific kind of silence where everyone looks away at exactly the same moment, that stayed with Priya longer than the words did. Had grown up in Fresno, California, in a neighborhood where the nearest public pool was 20 minutes by bus and closed every winter because the city couldn't afford heating. Her mother, Meena Anand, worked double shifts at a hospital laundry facility. The kind of work that leaves your hands cracked and your back bent before you're 50. Her father had left when Priya was 7. Not dramatically. "I just didn't come home one Thursday and never came back." Meena never talked about it. She just worked more hours. Found swimming at 11 through a school program that lasted exactly one semester before the funding was cut. But one semester was enough. The water felt like the only place where being small and quiet and easy to overlook didn't matter. In the water, none of that existed. There was only the pull and the turn and the wall. She trained at the YMCA through middle school, coached by a retired high school teacher named Mr. Al Dawson, who charged nothing and asked nothing except that she show up. She showed up every morning at 5:15 for 4 years. When the YMCA closed its competitive program, she found a club team 40 minutes away. Meena drove her twice a week without complaint. Though Priya knew what those miles cost in gas money they didn't have. By 17, Priya had qualified for junior nationals. By 18, she had the 4th fastest 200-meter butterfly time in her age group in the country. 19, she was standing on the pool deck of the Olympic Development Center in Colorado Springs, being told by Gerald Voss that she didn't belong there. A tryout camp was 10 days. 40 girls, 12 spots on the extended development roster. Priya had driven herself to believe she was ready. Not blindly, she had the times to prove it. But readiness, she would learn, was not always the thing being evaluated. Gerald Voss had coached 3 Olympic teams. He had a reputation that preceded him into every room. Tall, gray-haired, a voice that carried like a starting pistol. He had favorites. Everyone in the swimming world knew it, even if nobody said it at official functions. His favorites were girls who had trained at private clubs since they were 8, who had fathers, who sat in the stands at every meet, who looked a certain way in a certain light. Had noticed it on the first day. I told herself it didn't matter. She told herself the times would speak. On day 3, during a drill set, she finished first in her heat, not by a little, by half a body length. Coach Voss walked past her lane without stopping. On day 5, he pulled aside 3 girls for individual feedback sessions. Priya wasn't one of them. She watched through the glass wall of the conference room as he drew stroke diagrams on a whiteboard for girls whose times were slower than hers. On day 7, she asked, politely, after practice when the others had gone, if she could schedule time to go over her butterfly entry. She had been working on a technical adjustment and wanted his input. Looked at her the way people look at something that's mildly inconvenient. "You've got a good engine," he said. "But this program isn't just about who's fast right now. It's about who we can develop, who fits the profile." She didn't ask what profile meant. She already knew. "I'd like the chance to show you," she said. That was when he said it. "Swimmers like you don't make Olympic teams. You make excuses." She hadn't made a single excuse. She had simply asked for a meeting. Walked away. She stood at the edge of the pool for a long moment, looking at the water. Then she picked up her towel, folded it neatly, and went back to the locker room. Did not cry until she was in her car, and even then she gave herself exactly 4 minutes. She had timed herself before. Grief had a way of expanding to fill whatever space you gave it, so she had learned to give it less. After 4 minutes, she called her mother. Ina answered on the second ring, voice tired from a long shift. "Not going to select me," Priya said. A pause. "Then did you swim your race?" "Yes." "Did you swim it the best you could?" "Yes." "And you're not done," Meena said. "You're just not done yet." That was all. They talked for 2 more minutes about nothing in particular. What was in the refrigerator, whether Priya had packed enough warm layers, and then Meena had to get back to work. Aya sat in that parking lot for another hour. She watched other girls leave in pairs, laughing, talking about dinner plans. She watched Coach Voss walk to his car without looking up. Then she drove to the nearest public pool she could find, paid the drop-in fee, and swam for another 90 minutes alone. A was not selected for the development roster. Official letter cited program fit and roster balance. 12 girls were named. Priya's times were faster than 4 of them. Taped the letter to the wall above her desk. Not out of bitterness, or not only out of bitterness, she taped it there because she had learned somewhere along the way that the things meant to stop you are most useful when they're visible. When you can look at them every morning and say, "Not yet." Not yet does not mean never. Was 20 years old now, living in a studio apartment in Phoenix with a mattress on the floor and a part-time job at a sports nutrition store. She trained at Arizona State's aquatic facility under an arrangement she'd negotiated herself. She would help with stroke clinics for the university's youth program in exchange for lane access during off hours. Assistant coach there, a young woman named Coach Bev Torres, had watched Priya swim for 20 minutes and then said simply, "What do you need?" Nobody had asked her that before, not like that. They told Bev what she needed. Bev gave her a key card and a training plan and very little else, because Priya had made clear she knew what she was doing. What she needed was water and time. She had both. 18 months. Priya trained before the store opened and after it closed. She ate carefully, slept carefully, tracked every split with the precision of someone who understood that margins at the elite level are measured in hundredths of a second. She didn't have a sports psychologist or a nutritionist or a video analysis system. And she had a waterproof notebook and a coach who checked in twice a week and believed her when she said she was ready. Entered the U.S. Open Championships that winter as an unattached athlete. No club, no sponsor, no coach in the stands. She swam the 200-meter butterfly in 2:54. Was the 3rd fastest time in the country that year. Swimming world is smaller than people think. Word moves fast. By the time Priya drove home from that meet, 3 club programs had sent emails asking if she was looking for representation. A journalist from a swimming trade publication wanted an interview. One of the emails was from a woman named Dr. Fiona Marsh, who ran a performance consulting firm that worked with Olympic hopefuls. I read all the emails. She responded to Dr. Marsh first. Met over video call. Dr. Marsh was direct, the kind of direct that didn't soften things unnecessarily, but also didn't mistake bluntness for honesty. She told Priya she had a legitimate shot at the Olympic trials if she could drop another half second in the next 14 months. She told her the path was narrow, but it was real. Told her the things that would work against her. The politics of the sport. The way selection committees worked, the fact that she had no major club affiliation and no established name. None of that is insurmountable, Dr. Marsh said, but you need to know what you're walking into. I've been walking into it for 3 years, Priya said. Dr. Marsh looked at her for a moment. Then she smiled, small, like she was filing something away. And you already know more than most of the girls I work with, she said. They built a plan, 14 months, every week mapped out. Priya kept her job at the nutrition store for 8 more months, then gave up shifts as the intensity increased. She moved into a cheaper apartment. She stopped buying things she didn't need, which turned out to be most things. She called her mother every Sunday, and Mina listened without offering advice, unless asked, which was exactly the right thing. What Priya didn't know during those months was that Mina had been quietly managing a health situation she hadn't mentioned. A problem with her kidneys, not catastrophic, but serious enough to require monitoring and medication that cost more than she let on. Priya found out only because she came home for a weekend in October and found the pill bottles on the kitchen counter, lined up with the quiet organization of someone who has been managing something alone for a while. She stood in the kitchen for a long time. Then she sat down next to her mother, who was watching television as if nothing unusual was happening, and said, "How long?" 8 months, Mina said. "Oh, why didn't you tell me?" "Because you had work to do." Wanted to argue. She couldn't. She had work to do, and her mother had made a choice about what information she needed to do it. You couldn't be angry at someone for protecting you, even when the protection made you feel like something had been taken. "Are you okay?" Priya asked. "I'm managing," Mina said. "It's manageable." Reached over and turned up the volume on the television. End of conversation. That night, after Mina had gone to sleep, Priya sat at the kitchen table and looked at the pill bottles and thought about what it meant to carry things quietly so that someone else didn't have to. And she thought about how much of her mother's life had been spent doing exactly that. And she thought about what it would mean to bring Mina something that couldn't be taken away. Not a paycheck, not a problem solved, but something that said, "Your sacrifice was not wasted on someone ordinary." He drove back to Phoenix the next morning. She swam the hardest practice of her life. U.S. Olympic trials took place in Indianapolis in late June. 10,000 people in the stands, the best butterflyers in the country in the water. Anand had never swum in front of a crowd that large. She had competed in meets with a few hundred spectators. She had raced in near-empty pools at 5 in the morning. She had learned to locate the silence inside herself regardless of external noise. That was, in some ways, the only thing Coach Voss had inadvertently given her. By removing every external support, he had forced her to build an internal one. She walked out on the pool deck and found her lane. In the warm-up area, she had overheard 2 coaches discussing the heat sheets. One of them mentioned her name, Anand, unattached, Arizona, in the tone people use for names they don't recognize. "Who is she?" one of them asked. "No idea," said the other, as she put her goggles on. In the stands, somewhere in Section C, her mother was sitting in a seat Priya had paid for. The first time Mina had ever watched her daughter race at a major national meet. Priya had insisted, had bought the ticket, booked the flight, arranged the hotel. Mina had protested every step of it, citing money and inconvenience, and the fact that she didn't want to be a distraction. Priya had said, simply, "I need you there." That was enough. Mina came. Her 200-meter butterfly final had 8 swimmers. Priya was seeded 3rd based on her qualifying time. Didn't look at the scoreboard. She didn't look at the other lanes. She stood behind the block and did the thing she had done 10,000 times in near-empty pools at 5 in the morning. She found the quiet inside the noise, and she waited. Starting signal, fired. Entered the water clean. First 50 meters she held back, not from fear but from strategy. She knew her race. She had studied her own splits for months, knew exactly where she had given away time in the past, knew the precise moment in the third 50 where every butterfly swimmer either breaks or doesn't. She had broken there before. She had learned not to. 100-meter turn she was second. The swimmer in lane 4, a 2-time national champion, was half a body ahead. At the 150 mark, they were even. Last 50 meters of the 200 butterfly are where character lives. The lactic acid has reached every part of your body. Your lungs are arguing with your arms. Your stroke wants to fall apart, and your brain starts suggesting, very reasonably, that maybe this particular moment doesn't have to be the one where you give everything. Ah had heard that voice before. She had learned its name. She pulled through the water, with everything she had, with every 5:15 morning, and every solo session in Phoenix, and every dinner she hadn't bought, because she needed the money for entry fees, with her mother's cracked hands, and the pill bottles on the kitchen counter, and the 4 minutes she gave herself to cry in a parking lot in Colorado Springs, with every silent room where nobody said anything, danger, with the piece of paper taped above her desk. She touched the wall, looked up at the scoreboard. Her time, 2:04:87. In first place. Qualifying standard for the Olympic Games was 2:05.3. Had broken it by nearly half a second. Noise in that arena took a shape she couldn't quite describe afterward. It wasn't just loud. It was directional, like it was coming toward her personally. Like 10,000 people had decided at the same moment to send something her way. Hung on the lane rope, she was not a crier by nature. She had spent years rationing that particular resource. But something gave way then, not loudly. Just a quiet internal release, like a knot finally loosened. Looked up at Section C. Anand was on her feet. She wasn't cheering the way the people around her were cheering. She was just standing, hands pressed together, looking at her daughter with an expression that had no good word for it in English. Something that was older than pride. Something that understood what the journey had cost and had decided the cost was worth it. Aya pressed 2 fingers to her lips and pointed up at the stands. Meena understood. In the post-race press area, a journalist asked Priya about her path to the trials, the unattached status, the unconventional training setup, the lack of major club affiliation. Answered honestly. She talked about the YMCA and Mr. Dawson. She talked about Bev Torres and the lane access at Arizona State. She talked about her mother. And the journalist asked, "Were there people along the way who didn't believe in you?" Aya was quiet for a moment. There were people, she said, who made it very clear that they saw a ceiling where I saw a starting point. That's their vision problem, not mine. I didn't name Gerald Voss. She didn't need to. But 3 weeks later, at a coaching conference in Dallas, someone introduced Coach Voss during a panel discussion on developing diverse talent in elite aquatics. And before the moderator could continue, someone in the audience called out, "Isn't that the guy who told Priya Anand she'd never make an Olympic team?" A room went quiet. Voss cleared his throat and said something about coaching philosophies and the difficulty of evaluation at the development level. And nobody wrote it down. Olympics were held in late summer. Priya swam in the 200-meter butterfly final on a Tuesday morning, 8 lanes, 8 women, the best in the world. Had spent 2 years building a race. She swam it. She touched the wall in 2:04:12. It was a personal best by 3/4 of a second. It was the fastest 200-meter butterfly swim by an American woman in 4 years. It was good enough for the bronze medal. As she stood on the podium in 3rd place and looked out at the arena and thought about the word yet. Not yet. Not yet does not mean never. Nina was watching from home on a laptop on the kitchen table because the medical expenses from this year had made the trip to the Olympics impossible. But she was watching. Priya knew she was watching. Nina, sitting alone in that kitchen in Fresno with the pill bottles lined up on the counter and the laptop screen bright in the early morning, watched her daughter step onto an Olympic podium and receive a bronze medal, and said nothing at all, because some things don't have words. And the ones that do are never big enough anyway. After the games, a reporter asked Priya what she would tell young swimmers, girls especially, who came from places and circumstances that made the path seem impossible. Thought about it for a real moment. Not a press conference moment, a real one. Don't ask for permission, she said finally. The people who could give it to you are often the least qualified to decide whether you deserve it. Build your lane. Swim your race. Let the clock tell the truth. She paused. A clock doesn't care who your coach is. Outside the arena, the world kept moving. Other athletes, other stories, other girls in other cities who had not yet found their pools. Some of them were right now waking up early, in places where the water was cold and the lanes were crowded and nobody with a clipboard had noticed them yet. They were not done. They were just not done yet. I keep thinking about that parking lot in Colorado Springs. Not the pool, not the podium. The parking lot, where Priya sat in her car for an hour after a man with a clipboard told her she didn't fit the profile, 4 minutes to cry, then a phone call, then back in the water. That's the part nobody sees. That's the part that actually decides everything. What Gerald Voss did that day wasn't just cruel, it was a miscalculation. He looked at a 19-year-old girl with the 4th fastest time in her age group in the country and decided she wasn't worth his attention. Not because her times were wrong, because something about her didn't match the picture in his head of what a champion was supposed to look like. That's not coaching. That's a failure of imagination dressed up as authority. And here's what I've come to understand about moments like that one. The people who dismiss you are rarely evaluating your ceiling. They're describing their own. When someone tells you there's no room for you at the table, they're usually telling you something about the smallness of the table, not the size of what you're capable of. Didn't win because she was angry. Anger is fuel, but it burns out. She won because she did something harder than staying furious. She stayed honest. Honest about her weaknesses, honest about her splits, honest about the half-second she needed to find, and exactly where in the race she was losing it. That kind of clear-eyed, unsentimental honesty about yourself, that's not something a coach gives you. That's something you build when you've been left alone long enough to actually look. It's a character that develops in people who have to figure things out without much help. It's not loudness. It's not bravado. It's something quieter, a kind of moral steadiness, ability to keep doing the right thing when no one's watching and no one's clapping, and the lane is empty at 5 in the morning, and you're doing it anyway because you decided a long time ago that who you are when no one's looking is the only version of yourself that counts. Mina had it. She managed her health alone for 8 months so her daughter could work without worry. She drove 40 minutes each way, twice a week, without complaint. For years, she didn't perform sacrifice. She just did it quietly as a matter of course. Priya learned something from watching that. I think most of us do. Eventually, that the people who shape us most aren't always the loudest ones in the room. What strikes me most about this story isn't the medal. It's the sequence. The way each hard thing Priya endured forced her to develop something she wouldn't have found any other way. Being cut built the internal architecture that no club program would have given her. Training alone built the self-knowledge that carried her through the last 50 meters in Indianapolis. Her mother's quiet example built the moral backbone that kept her from becoming bitter when bitterness would have been entirely understandable. None of it was wasted. That's the thing about cause and effect when you're paying attention. Very little is actually wasted. The hard parts are the curriculum. A clock doesn't care who your coach is. It never did.